So you've got to have a very strategically planned schedule to like get deep into the work, and doing all of that kind of like context switching between different tasks and calls was really kind of getting to me over time.
Context switching is probably the number one drain of life force on the planet. Like, I have recently made a more concerted effort to like, I hate the idea. Everyone's like, oh, time blocking, but just like, hey, I recognize when I'm most creative, when I'm best for my clients. Like, let's just put the time in the call at that time. Let's just bake it into the cake instead of just trying to jump from this to that to this to that. But one thing you're saying, which is a totally different skill set, right? Like, you being a great writer is very different from you being a great manager, which is really what a lot of I think like what you're describing on the complete other end of the spectrum is the delegation part of this work, right? Like, how do I coach people or get them to do the thing, especially as you try to operate it more as a quote unquote agency, whether you have contractors or employees or whatever you want, however you choose to interface with them. The whole point is that you have to get them to do a thing for you at the quality you want. It takes a lot of effort and a totally different skill set. But then you look and you go, well, it's just faster if I do it myself, which there's pros and cons, because you're like, well, there's a limit to how much I can just do myself. Totally. The question is the limit, are you happy with that limit as a business owner? And some people, the limit is like, whatever, it's not high enough and they have to do it and they have to bring in other people. So how did you work through that though?
Yeah. So honestly, one of the things that I think is a completely, I'll say, underrated resource that most solo service providers need to have on their team is some kind of operational person who is directing the trains. So I'd experimented with this a few times in the business. I've had different scopes of people. I've had online business managers who are actually managing the agency. So I was kind of playing this editor-in-chief role, and they were kind of the back and forth between clients, back and forth between teams. So I was kind of only interacting for the big stuff. So I had that at the agency, which was helpful. I've also had a collection of like ops specialists or VAs, but I actually hired someone a few months ago, which has been the most transformative, at least as far as like that outsourcing and delegation goes. And this person is more of a business strategist, but they're also kind of they're like the best combination of a COO, a CFO, and a CRO, where, you know, I have my first company, the ghostwriting stuff. I have a second company that I guess we're technically in stealth mode still, but it's basically a publishing house for all of my books that I'm producing. So we're working on my first one this year, but I have a second company we're building out this year. And it's basically having somebody else to take me out. So I hired somebody probably 2 months ago who's kind of the best combination of a COO, CRO, CFO. And I was just struggling to be like, look, like I quite literally, like I've scaled back all my marketing, like all my marketing is fucking dialed, like all that's great. And I don't know how to solve the magic number of whatever we need to make from a revenue perspective so I can pay my salary. And I'm literally developmentally editing a book this summer. So like, I'm quite literally splitting my time. I don't know how to solve that on my calendar. I don't know how to solve that with the client, pipeline, whatever else. So like my brain, that is not my zone of genius. I'm very business, like I have a lot of business chops just like intuitively, but they're just become.
Well, you run a business.
Yeah, I run a business. Like I've done well.
Figure stuff out at some point, right?
Yeah, like done well for myself. But there's just a certain point where I'm like, okay, this is now too complex for my brain, and it is quite literally draining me from client work and book work. So if we're gonna do this, which this is a non-negotiable, like we're publishing my books, we're writing for clients, so that's a non-negotiable. I just can no longer hold it when my business has this much complexity in it. So I hired somebody who has been incredible, like getting our financial planning like set up, which to levels I'm like, I've never even come close to being that organized with, and like thoughtfully planned ahead, where I'm just like, wait, you can do that? Like, I just feel like I'm like Han Solo, in the universe, just out here. I'll do whatever it takes.
This is the great aha of being a solopreneur, is that like no one is totally alone, and you shouldn't be. As much as we would like to believe